Now, what I'm seeing for 2012, first of all, as we go up to that point, I am seeing more Earth changes. I'm seeing restructuring, which to some people is going to be very fearful, but will continue to just sort of work out. There's going to be people who want to think that it's all going to go to hell in a handbasket, and they're going to be more convinced as each new event happens that this is it.
And they'll bet their witch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're going to see things change, but then it's not going to be so bad, like with the American government and whatever is happening there. But then the next big thing is going to happen, and they're going to worry about that, and they're going to worry about the next one, worry about the next one. Now, as we get closer to 2012, I think you're going to see dreams coming true. I think you're going to see disclosure. I think you're going to see a more formal acknowledgement of life on other planets, which is already happening more and more with Mars, because these witnesses are telling me that these guys on the inside realize that we're basically out of time. As far as they can concept, the only way that they see it is it's a disaster. They see that no matter what happens, that we're basically dealing with a huge catastrophe, because even if we get through it without the pole shift, we still lose all of our electrical devices, period. And that brings us back to the Dark Ages, which means that people in third world countries are actually going to be a lot better off within that probable reality that they're looking at, because they're not reliant upon these electrical systems for their basic livelihood. Now, that means also that if they think the game is over, that it doesn't really matter anymore if they hold back the truth. They can release the truth and get it out there. Now, one of the things that I heard about is a drug that already exists and has existed for some time that can inhibit the destruction of the cell walls when you're exposed to radiation, and basically keep you alive when you're exposed to a massive dose of radiation, much more than anything like iodine or anything that's out there in the public. And I've heard that this is one of the things that's going to be released fairly soon as a way to sort of help things out as we go through this. Because now they don't really need to cover it up anymore. So that's a prophecy that I can put out there. I don't know if it will come true. I hope that it does. But this is what I've heard is one of the things that might come out pretty soon. I think that in general you're going to hear a lot more. I don't ever think you're going to get a so-called official announcement that UFOs are real, at least from the American government. But I definitely think there's going to be a much more widespread awareness and much more quality information that comes through. But once we get to 2012 and we get to that point, this is where all this biblical-sounding stuff actually becomes real, except that you got to remember, the Bible is merely one source of prophecy that talked about this. And when fundamentalist Christians get all caught up in the idea of a rapture and that only 144,000 people are going to make it, they're blatantly disregarding the evidence that shows that every major spiritual tradition in our planet's history has talked about what's going to happen, describing it as a shift into a golden age in which people will no longer have these deceptive and scary qualities. It's a much more harmonious planet. And when you start to consider the view of the law of one material, the 4.6 billion people who appear to have died based on the way that they're looking through these time viewing technologies are actually the 4.6 billion people who transmuted as a result of this dimensional shift and are now existing on a parallel reality that is no longer coincident with the third dimensional reality that we now see. It exists in parallel to it, but it's not visible by it anymore. Now, it does appear that not everybody goes through this, that residual 1.4 billion, or however many it turns out to be, actually do not transmute and actually do stay on the Earth. And the third world countries, maybe they're okay. Because if there isn't a pole shift, and apparently, the timeline where we don't have a pole shift is now the much stronger one, according to what Burrish has been saying. If they're still here, they probably will have a chance to go through this later on. It's not going to happen all at once. But then there's other people who basically go into their underground bunkers and hide out and are members of this Illuminati planetary elite. And they may still end up having this future where they, turn into the J-Rods and into the Nordics. Because I've gotten confirmation from more than one source about this future reality of where some of these human beings end up going, and that they time travel back here Because according to this system of thought, these future humans had a small gene pool, and as a result, they're having breeding problems, and that they're basically getting this degenerative nerve condition. It's causing them to get crippled and not be able to function. And therefore, they're trying to come back to our time and get our genetic material so that they can beef up their own stock and hopefully cure this problem, which hasn't been working. And every time they travel back in time to come here, they're making it worse because they're creating new branches, new timelines of parallel realities. And the problem keeps getting worse and worse, not better. And so they are looking at the fact that if we don't have this pole shift, which it now appears that we won't, then once that moment arrives and the pole shift doesn't happen, their whole reality may cease to exist. It'll be like they never even existed at all, because they're now going to be in the parallel reality that they would have been in if the pole shift hadn't happened, and they won't even remember or have any awareness of who they were in the timeline that they traveled in. And this is where it gets really, really
wild.
weird. Isn't it weird?
Yeah.
But anyway,
David, let me ask you something, just because this is something...
Well, wait a minute. Let me finish this thought, because I'm almost done.
Okay.
The positive reality is that the 4.6 billion are the people who are at least positive enough that they transmute when this energy shift happens, and that's the majority. Now, where you go from there is up to you. But the initial stage is that you're in a parallel reality, which is like a thought form lucid dream. Like everybody's in a big lucid dream. And that's where we're all going. That's the first stage of it. People will recreate the Earth from memory as if it was still the same. They're not going to realize anything was different. And I believe, as I said before, the Matrix movie talks about this in the first film, when Morpheus says, you believe you're in the year 1999, but you're actually in the year 2199, and this is what the Earth looks like today. And then it's this horrible pole shift type of reality that they're looking at. And then he says, you know, the Matrix rebuilt the world at the peak of your civilization, the year 1999. Well, this is kind of what I've been shown happens, except that it's all done by our collective consciousness. Now, once you get into this reality, because it is a lucid dream now, you can levitate, you can do all sorts of miraculous Christ-like things very easily if you start putting your mind to it. And this is a transitional period that some people go through. Other people are going to go directly to this ascension experience, which is where you basically meet with your higher self face-to-face. You're contacted by your higher self in person. The world around you just sort of fades away, and you go into this ecstatic spiritual experience. And if you choose to go, that's another thing. You have to make a choice that you want to go. Then you actually go through an experience where you do a life review, not just of this life, but of all your past lives leading up to this one. And then you basically figure out exactly how much progress you made in all these different lifetimes and boil that all down to an exact level of vibration that you've reached in your progress. Then that determines where you reincarnate next. And most people who are on the positive path are choosing to stay with the Earth. The Earth is only going to be in this transitional period for a short time, roughly measured as 100 to 700 years of our time, somewhere in that neighborhood, in which people are in this sort of parallel reality like the lucid dream I was talking about. After that happens, they clear out, they go where they're going to go. The people who still need third-dimensional experience will go on to another third-dimensional planet, which will still be like things are here now. Everybody else goes to the Earth in its fourth-dimensional state, which is much more harmonious than things are now. So again, in just rough, sketched-out terms, that's what the Law of One series tells us is going to happen, buffeted a little bit with my own intuitive data of what I see to sort of augment that perspective. But it's very exotic, and it's not something that's easy to teach people and have them believe it, but, you know, I'm just giving you the truth as far as I see it.
All right. What's your question, Cheryl?
I was just going to ask him about
giving you the truth as far as I see it.